One.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the Warrant Committee. I hope everybody's doing all right. I declare a quorum and call the meeting to order. We only have one substantive item on the agenda tonight. It is, I'm going to go on, I'm going to look at our agenda. It is to discuss and vote to authorize the Warrant Committee Chair to approve end of fiscal year transfers between departments and out of the reserve fund. We're lucky to have Town Accountant Amy Dexter with us tonight to help explain what this is, to help explain it to me, because it's my understanding that this issue is usually handled by the Warrant Committee as part of our discussions and deliberations and votes as part of the workup for the annual town meeting. What happens is that at the end of the fiscal year, there are monies and accounts in the town that can be transferred within departments and between departments. And there's some requests for monies to come out of the reserve fund. And these are the types of transfers that do require Warrant Committee approval. Okay. And so what the practice has been is that the Warrant Committee votes to authorize the chair to meet with and discuss these requests with the town, and they vote to authorize the chair. So that is what I would be asking from the Warrant Committee tonight. So I'd be asking at some point, if people think it's appropriate, that there'd be a motion and a vote on that. So Amy Dexter, could you please help us out and explain, to the Warrant Committee what we're doing here? Thank you.
Sure. Do you want me to explain the year-end appropriation transfers as well as the reserve fund transfers?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So I'll do the reserve fund transfers first, because I think that one's everyone's probably a little bit more familiar with. But Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 7 allows for the reserve fund appropriation transfers. And what that is, if you recall, at annual town meeting in June of 2022, Article 40 appropriated $200,000 to the reserve fund. And then again at special town meeting in December of 22, Article 1 appropriated an additional $388,670 to the reserve fund for a total of $588,670 for fiscal year 2023. And what the reserve fund is for is it's an appropriation set aside for extraordinary and unforeseen expenses that couldn't be anticipated by the time the budget was approved by town meeting or by the time that the tax rate was set. So examples of things that may come down the pipe that I anticipate for fiscal year 23 would be a reserve fund transfer to Department of Public Works to cover mainly the snow and ice deficit, as well as there's some over expenditure in the vehicle maintenance department related to inflation on parts and supplies due to supply chain issues. I don't have exact dollar amounts for anything yet. This is like my first pass through departmental expenditures to see where they stand compared to budget. But those transfer from the reserve fund to the departmental budget would just require approval by the finance committee, i.e. our warrant committee of the town. Something that's normally done, but again, it has to be unforeseen or extraordinary. So that's that one. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions about that? Jay has his hand up. Jay, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you for that. You did mention the snow and ice budget. I don't know if that was a hypothetical or if you meant they actually need that this year because it was not a very snowy year.
No, so it was not a very snowy year, but we will need a reserve fund transfer this year because of inflation on other line items within the Department of Public Works budget. In the past, the last several years, we've been able to cover the snow and ice or a portion of the snow and ice deficit through other line items within the Department of Public Works budget. We just can't do that this year due to other inflation costs on other line items within that budget.
Well, I'm sorry, what was the phrase used? Unusual and unforeseen or something like that?
Correct.
So what
Extraordinary
was,
and unforeseen,
okay, so what was extraordinary or unforeseen about the snow and ice budget?
because we don't know how much it will be every year.
But it was, I'm guessing, as low as it has been in, I mean, is this because we always underdo the snow and ice budget?
That's part of it, but there's also things other than snow. A lot of times they pre-treat roads when they anticipate snow or cold, wet weather so that it doesn't freeze. So it's not always just the visibility of snow. But yes, that's part of it. In the event that a reserve fund transfer doesn't get approved for that, then we would have to raise it on next year's tax recap, which is only going to cut into next year's budget.
Yeah,
So
I understand. I just,
yeah.
Is this a situation where we don't have a choice? We have to say yes, because saying that the snow and ice expenditures for this year were extraordinary and unforeseen does not feel great to me, but maybe we just don't have a choice.
You have a choice, but the impact would be on reducing something in the 24 budget. Because
Okay,
we
I'll
would
drop
have
it.
to raise it on 24.
Thank you.
Judy, you have your hand up. You are recognized.
Thank you. I'm kind of with Jay on this one, thinking that what are you going to use the money for if in fact we have another no snowy winter? So we authorize the town to put money to this department in anticipation that it might be used, and if it's not, are you going to use it to mow lawns or
So
cut down trees or?
So this is for fiscal 23, which is going to close on Friday. I already
Okay.
know that I have a deficit. We already know there's a deficit in Department of Public Works.
A deficit caused by
In inflation in parts and supplies and other utilities, as well as snow and ice expenditure in excess of what was appropriated for that.
could you put a dollar figure to the snow and ice, please?
I can't at this time because I thought tonight was to authorize, and the year hasn't closed yet, so I don't know the exact numbers.
Okay, it does seem to me that where you're asking the members of this committee to authorize Dave, who's
Correct.
really good with numbers and understanding of many things in town government. But it seems to me that you're unable to provide information that might aid our decision in this.
So preliminary numbers, when I looked at it last week, I anticipate Department of Public Works will be overspent by approximately $250,000 to $300,000, of which over $200,000 is in vehicle maintenance alone, overspend on materials and parts to fix townwide equipment due to inflation because of supply chain issues, And the remainder is other individual line items as well as snow and ice. I just don't have the exact dollar amount for snow and ice. So I don't want to put it out there, but I'm not asking for the, the full amount in the reserve fund. It won't be that. It's just conceptually, I
might-
know what would be needed.
It might seem easier to understand if we didn't call it snow and ice and we called it multi-factored, multi-line items that are causing the deficiency. I think that's where there might be some confusion. We think we're just bolstering snow and ice when in fact, there may be 7 line items that we're covering. Would
It's
that be
mainly-
correct?
It's mainly snow and ice and mainly supplies are the 2 large ones. I don't want to not say it's snow and ice because I want to be transparent and I don't want to mislead anybody. Part of it
Okay.
is snow and ice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Judy. I'm going to jump in real quick. Then I see Nick Milano has his hand up, so we'll ask for his input. I would like to mention that my plan, if authorized, would be to go to the town hall, sit down with Amy Dexter, sit down with Nick, go through all of this. If there's any other members of the warrant committee who want to be there for that, I will share that information of when that's going to happen, and anybody who wants to come, I'd be more than happy, to have your assistance with this, so that we have, because it's true, it's like what Trudy is saying, it's like, potentially we're authorizing, me to approve, these are big numbers, this is taxpayer money. So anybody who wants to help, please come on down. Nick, do you have something you would like to help us with?
No, I'm good. Amy covered it. I just wanted to just to Jay's point, note that it wasn't the snowiest of winters, but there were numerous storms that we had to mobilize for. So prep, mobilize, demobilize. The day of the week that the storms fell on, when they're on weekends, it's more expensive. It's a factor of the number of snow and ice events more so than the sheer amount of snow. So small annoying storms can be more expensive sometimes than a big push on one big storm. So it's just the multitude and recurring factor that we had this winter contributes to it, as well as the long-term underfunding that the warrant committee mentioned in the warrant committee report about snow and ice as well, that we go into each fiscal year knowing that this will be a bit of a challenge. And this year it turned out to be not the snowiest of winters, but a lot of mobilization for smaller storms.
Thank you for that. Jareem, I see that you have your hand up. You are recognized.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I just want to, just kind of put this in perspective, maybe for myself or maybe for anybody else who's on here. What we're doing here is we're just basically authorizing you to sort of, again, have these conversations, make these decisions, which, I am totally confident in you, man. You're the leader. I would never question you for the most part. You know what I mean? At all. And, in general, this is standard operating procedure for this town, as I come to understand it. So essentially, the question that I was really going to ask, you already answered. You said that you were going to share some of the information. I mean, I think people here might have a concern as to, again, how you were going to go about, sharing the information, or, if you're going to sort of make these decisions in real time. I trust you. I don't got to be there at all. But I think the concern that I hear people expressing are like, the details, you know what I mean? They want to know. So, I didn't get to read the attachment that you sent, but are you going to be publishing these changes, or how's that going to be handled? I guess is the first question. And then, in terms of how you're going to handle it personally, Dave, how is it that you're going to go about sharing the information and/or your decision making criteria with the rest of the folks? Those are my two questions.
All right, thank you. So to answer that question, I'm gonna ask for help from Amy and Nick. So what's the common practice for how do we account for this accounting? Like how, when we sit down and we go through this, one of the things, Dream, I do think it's likely to happen in real time. I think that's what we're setting up. Is I will have an open line of communication. I have an open line of communication right now. It's mainly with Amy who's crunching these numbers. We've had a brief conversation, much along these lines, like what I call big blue arrow conversation. What are the 10 areas we think we're looking at? What are generally what we're talking about? Then I think that we will sit down pretty much in real time and go through the requests. I will apply, like a basic reasonableness standard approach based upon the explanations, the requests, and, is it reasonable? Does it make sense? Is it prudent, et cetera? And then, Amy, like, what do we get, like, as a result of all that, do we get a table? Is there do we get a document that's out of this that lays out what these expenditures are? Like, how is that presented?
So I normally don't do anything during the year. I do something for the auditors. They audit it. And then it's published in the back of the warrant every year at annual town meeting. So if you look at the June warrant, you'll see what was done for fiscal 22. But I can certainly prepare that early and share it with you to share with the committee. And it just summarizes it. It shows from, where it went, from reserve fund, where it went, and what it was for, and then the balance left in the reserve fund.
So like in the warrant, is that like like an addendum or something that's called year-end expense? Like, what is it broken out in its own column?
So the reserve fund transfers are a table in the back of the warrant. The year-end transfers you can see in the audit report, but they're not at that detailed level. It's just they show like budget adjustments, and it falls in that column of one of their supplemental schedules.
Okay.
But again, I don't have a problem sharing with the committee because I do it anyways for the auditors and for myself, just to make sure I did the entries and everything right. Also, I have this big spreadsheet I share with the auditors that they have to tie out the budget every year, and to go from town meeting through these year-end transfers, reserve fund transfers, supplemental appropriations, and then tie out to the town clerk's certified appropriation, which she prepares after town meeting, and then to the tax recap that's used to set the tax rate. So I have all kinds of information, but it's usually prepared as I'm getting ready for the audit. But I can, make an effort to prepare that as soon as I know which ones are approved so that you can share. I can also prepare that in anticipation for our sit down, so you have it right in front of you. So you can sometimes get that top level view to really understand what we're asking for, where it's coming from and where it's going, if that makes sense.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other requests with regards to this transfer? So this type of transfer. So Amy, what's next?
Okay, so the next one is falls under Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 33B, and it's appropriation transfers, which I refer to as a year-end transfer. So these can only be done within the last 60 days of year end and the first 15 days of the new fiscal year. So from May 1st through July 15th. And they're mainly done in order to really clean up the books and records to get ready for the audit. And these generally tend to be transfers from within a department. So if you recall, when you look in the warrant, how we asked town meeting to approve the budget, many of the departments have salary and wage, and then they have general. And sometimes we can't overspend either one of those lines because town meeting approved it that way. Sometimes we need some more flexibility than that as we get towards year end. And I have some departments that were anticipating the salary and wage will be underspent mainly due to vacancies and people leaving and us not being able to fill the positions right away. And the asks are to transfer some of the appropriation from salary and wage down to general to mainly cover some overspend there, again, due to, these don't have to be unforeseen, unanticipated, but most of them are just house cleaning. They're overspent and we need to just move the money around. This is where, if you recall, and I don't want to get into too much conversation, but the schools won't be part of any of this. They don't need that. They have a bottom line budget. They manage that within their budget. But on the town side, we don't have as much flexibility because of the way we voted. So these year-end appropriation transfers allow us to move within line items, either within a budget. So for instance, for example, the IT department has had a long-term vacancy and the salary and wages are anticipated to be lower than what was appropriated. And I anticipate that we are going to ask to move some of the salary and wage down to general to finalize the upgrade of the town's website, which the majority of the expense related to that was grant funded, but we're coming up a little short. So we'd like to finish that to upgrade the website. So that's an example of something we'll ask. So within IT, we'll ask to move some of the salary and wage budget down to general to cover that. Some of the other ones are in in library, for instance. As you guys know, a lot of times every year their books and materials line isn't funded at the level that they request. So they again anticipate some underspend on the salary and wage line. And we anticipate that the trustees and the director are going to ask for a transfer from salary and wage down to the books and materials line so that they can, fill in some of that gap where they didn't get funded at the level that they would like to be. So these transfers, again, the last May, June, have to be done by July 15th. Everything has to be done by July 15th. That's the magic date for me to get the books of the town closed. For fiscal 23, the appropriation transfers require not only the warrant committee approval, but also the select board approval. And as I mentioned, schools won't be asking for anything. And so that won't be part of it. And that's pretty much it. I think that explains it. Does that one make sense? You can also go between departments, but at this point, until I have the final numbers for June, I'm not anticipating that, but it doesn't mean there might be something that I missed. So I just want to put that out there. In the past, we have maybe transferred from one department to another because we didn't, we couldn't absorb it within that department, but I'm not anticipating anything significant at this time, similar to that.
Thank you. I saw a hand. Was that Lori? Yes, Lori. And Lori, dogs get 2 votes on the warrant committee.
All right, I'll get the other one too. Then we'll have 3. This is more process, Amy, is if they're under in salary, but over in another area, what happens if we didn't approve a transfer? Like because you have to zero out the budget. Right?
Yeah, so a couple things. We could ask for a reserve fund transfer, but we prefer to handle it within a department.
Yeah.
It will be reported to the auditors and to the Department of Revenue as an over expenditure.
Okay. And then you'd have the other accounts with an underspend, which makes no sense.
Right, so it will, at the end of the day, the net amount is the amount that factors into the free cash calculation. But, you know, I prefer not to get dinged by the auditors for something that Mass General laws allow. And they do that for a reason, right? This is common. This happens in every town or city. And you know, it's usually minimal. If you look back in the warrants for the last, well, these you won't really see in there, but they're usually nothing huge. And usually they're explained very well why we're doing it or what they're going to use the money for or why they need it.
So in the case of the website, like, do you have to cut that check by Friday because it's the end of
No.
the year, or you can just
No.
appropriate it?
So you can, so we'll just move the budget from one line item to the other. I just have to get that approved by this committee and the select board on or before July 15th. And then as long as there's a purchase order in the system by June 30th, that shows that we've committed to that work and we've
Got it.
committed to that vendor. It's called an encumbrance, and it carries
Oh,
it
right,
over so that we can then pay after July 15th. If we don't have that encumbrance, we have to pay all of fiscal 23 expenses on or before July 15th.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Amy, were there any other types of transfers that we might be asked to consider?
So the main ones that I highlighted on my radar, my summary here, the larger ones were the IT, the library, and the third one I have written down is consolidated facilities. As some of you may be aware, that our director of consolidated facilities retired. And when he retired, there's some contractual obligations that had to be paid out to him. But also the new director started right away. So we didn't have that vacancy like we had in some other departments. So we need to cover an overage in the salary and wage line because of that. So we're anticipating that will either be a transfer from general up to salary and wage or possibly a reserve fund transfer. I'm just not sure where they're going to land on the general expenses to know at this point in time if there's going to be enough to cover that. We do have some other areas where I just anticipate we're going to be underspent in salary and wage because we had a lot of vacancies this year. But those departments I don't think will need to ask for any kind of transfer. So those are really the big ones. And then, yeah, and then I'm not sure with some of the benefit lines because we haven't fully analyzed those yet. So I just have to make sure all of the journal entries are in everything to account for those expenditures before I'll really know. Just looking at my thing here, but I think that's the majority of it. I think we're in decent shape. There might be some in the enterprise funds as well, because again, we vote those line items. So those line items are great for transparency when you're voting the budget and understanding it, but for year end, it just makes it a little bit less flexible. The other one that I didn't write down, but I know we'll have is in fire and police. We always vote the overtime lines separate. So we have salary and wage, overtime, and then we have their general categories. And I believe in the past, historically, we've always had to move between salary and wage to overtime. And we may have some of that, especially I believe within the police, because they had a lot of vacancies. And when you have vacancies, that sometimes results in some of the officers having to take on OT shifts. I just am not 100% sure the magnitude of that, or if it's an issue, but it has in the past, that's been an area where we've needed what I call the year-end ones rather than reserve. So first and foremost, we would always look to go within department, right? To do the transfer within a department. And then sometimes it makes more sense to do it from the reserve fund. So for instance, DPW, I don't want to transfer from all these other departments that I know have salary and wage available, because then that gets messy as far as really understanding what happened in these departments. Because when we go and publish the warrant next year, we'll show the appropriation as it landed at year end after all these transfers. So it gets a little confusing when you go between departments. Does that make sense?
It
So that's
does.
why I targeted DPW for reserve fund, and most of these other ones will just be within.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, Amy and Nick, thank you for your help.
Welcome.
I'd like to open up the floor to discussion. Would we like to have some discussion with regards to the issue? If there's no need for a discussion, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a
motion-
motion.
I make the motion. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
No, I was gonna say I'd make the motion to let's vote for, the authority. Sorry, I'm just kind of messing around my phone here. So let's vote.
So would
So we're
that be,
voting to authorize the chair of the warrant committee, Dave Humphreys, to review these requests and make a decision at that time. By Dave.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty.
is that seconded? Was that a second,
Second.
Judy?
I can second that, yes.
All right, thank you. Karen, are you with us?
I am.
Would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Sure. Emily?
Thank you.
Oops. Steve Geister,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Allison. Is Allison still there? I'm on a different screen.
She looks to be.
We'll come back. Dream,
Yes.
Judy,
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
So, and we'll go back to Allison. Allison, are you there? I don't know that I heard her, but you did have 8 people vote. If 1, 2, 3, 6. You have 8 yeses, 1 abstention with
Oh,
Dave.
I'm a yes, sorry.
Yeah, okay, Allison makes it 9. And that's everybody.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. The other agenda item so thank you, Amy, and thank you, Nick, for joining us tonight. It's important, and I look forward to meeting with you, with any members of the warrant committee who want to be there to do this important work for our town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Amy, thanks, Amy.
Welcome.
The only, I put discuss town, fall town meeting. Just to have something on the agenda in case we wanted to discuss new business, if you will, going into fall town meeting, but I don't actually have any specific items to discuss with regards to that. So, the only other thing that I would have to say is thank you to everybody. I know that there are some appointments that are ending. That, and I know that, Bob Hess is working on the new appointments. I've not seen that. So to the people who won't be back, thank you. It was a good run. You know, the feedback that I got from citizens of the town was that they respect what we did and what we do. So, you know, from me, thank you. And I think that I can convey that from the town at large as well. The town does appreciate the work of the Warrant Committee. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add or say before I adjourn? Before we move to adjourn?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Judy.
do you anticipate that until the fall, this will be the last gathering we have? If you wish to call it a gathering, or do you anticipate that we might be meeting before the fall?
So it is my sense that we should meet. So this could go back into the sort of discussed town meeting agenda item.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it is likely that there will be a lot of discussion with regards to MBTA zoning. I think right now, the plan is that MBTA zoning be discussed at the fall town meeting, which has now been moved to December. I think in order to give time to figure out MBTA zoning. I know that the town planner is working hard on that. Planning board has met. I think they're talking about that tomorrow at the select board. So that is happening. That is a profound change to the zoning of our town. Like we haven't seen since 38, something like that. So that'll end up in front of the Warrant Committee. So I think in light of that, meeting sooner rather than later could be important, especially if we get new members. So we might as well get the new members sworn in and meeting in person with the Warrant Committee. We might as well start working on MBTA zoning. Also, there is a possibility, you know, one never knows. There is a possibility that something could happen with the the Brush Hill Road property for possible purchase of a new school. It's a possibility that could end up at the Warrant Committee quickly, possibly. Who knows? You know, one never knows, right? When it comes to the building of a new school, right? That we might have to pull the trigger on that quickly. So in light of that, oh yeah, so I could see, I know that Mr. O'Rourke is always very happy to oblige requests for updates with regards to the status. I know that, you know, that's something else that we could do, is just start getting the committee to meet, to be working on at least those two things. From what I can see, and Mr. Milano, please correct me if I'm wrong, but right now, those are the only two major things that I see coming our way for December. Maybe residential lighting. But so anyway, so we might as well get going. And then you know, if we're meeting, I know that Jay has brought up a lot of issues, like not in a bad way, just issues, right? You know, things that we could be working on with regards to, you know, our oversight of town finances, you know, things that we can be working on throughout the year, so that when it's time for the annual town meeting, you know, we're cramming a lot into March. And, you know, there's no reason on a lot of the things that we look at in March that we couldn't look at anytime. So that's a broad brush. I think the answer to your question, Judy, is that we will meet.
Okay,
You know,
thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody have anything else?
I just want to say thank you to everybody for welcoming me, making me feel sort of, well, not sort of, but a part of the community more so than I did before. And I appreciate it. And it's something I hold near and dear, as much as it might not seem, where I go on vacation and I'm sort of lax in my statements and stuff. It's just, beginners, scenario for me, so I anticipate being here and staying here, hopefully, for a long time. And I hope to see most of you again and in the future, out and about. And, if you see me, please say something to me, say hello, say whatever, because I'm really not, although I'm speaking right now and I'm sort of, outward, I'm not really. I'm not really. I really am quiet and I keep to myself because I'm a very introspective person, and when I do have something to say, that's when it all comes out, kind of like right now, and it comes out jumbled, but it's passionate and it's real, and you guys have inspired it. That's it.
Thank you, Jereen.
Thank you, Doreen.
Okay. Thank you to everybody. And for the
Motion-
people who are done, I know that Emily, your 3 years is up. So
Yes. So I wish all of you who are continuing on next year good luck. I will enjoy watching and being an audience member now.
okay.
But it was great to be a part of this committee.
All right. And thank you for helping me, right? At the secretary. I know we make it look easy, right? Because Emily and I spent a lot of time on the phone, just trying to get a grip. Just get a grip. So thank you. Okay. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second it.
Seconded. Does anyone oppose? We are adjourned. Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.